All right, well, everyone, welcome to the Security Plus session. Um, this is the SYO 501. Obviously, these are the objectives, probably the most important thing that you will want to have in your possession prior to starting your training and prior to going into the exam. Should be the first thing that you look at before you start your training. Should be the last thing that you look at before you go and take your exam. Okay, so just going to give a brief overview of what the objectives are. I'm not going to go too into depth because there is another video where I kind of show how to go through the objectives. But I just want to give you an idea of how I would prepare for this exam and how I have in the past. Some of the things that work, some of the things that don't. Okay, so first and foremost, make sure that you go out and you get these. They're easy to find. Just go to Google, type in the exam number and the objectives, and you'll find them. Okay. Once you find them, don't just set them somewhere. Make sure you put them somewhere where they're easy to revisit. Take some time, read through this, understand what's expected of you from this exam. I think there's a lot of people that take these exams and they don't really understand what's expected of them. Hopefully, if you're taking Security Plus and you've taken A Plus or Net Plus, at least one of those, these follow the same structure. Okay, so you're going to get a few performance-based questions, and then the majority of the exam is going to be some type of scenario-based multiple choice question where you're going to have to, you're going to have to analyze, troubleshoot. You're going to be placed in situations, and you're going to be asked to do things. Okay, so make sure you read this. It gives you an idea of what's expected of you. When it comes to these exams, what you need to be able to do, what you need to know the difference between, right? It tells you here, and it kind of gives you a breakdown about the exam and as a whole. So objectives very important. Gives you the details, right? Tells you how many questions you can get, how long the exam is going to be. Recommended experience, right? For this exam, they're recommending at least 2 years of experience in the field, right? So if you don't have that, you have to find a way to supplement that. You're going to be at a pretty huge disadvantage because by the time you get to this exam, they assume that you speak the language pretty well, and that shows with the wording that they use on the exams. There's a lot of terminology in this exam. So, all right. As you come down a little bit further, you get your percentage, you get your knowledge domains and your percentages. You can see this exam, for the most part, your main focus is going to be up here, but it is kind of pretty well rounded. There's not a huge, except for these, it doesn't go too much into cryptography. As far as the exam goes, you'll get a few questions, but your main focus is going to be up here. So. And then, like I said, there's another video that shows how to use these objectives, but I'm just kind of letting you know, how I use them is, I create a baseline and I just come through and I figure out what do I know already, right? It could be half, I could know half of this stuff, I could know none of it, just depending on your experience level. But you just come through and, the stuff that you're comfortable with, you mark it off. And, if it's something that you definitely need to look at, that's the stuff that you leave blank. And then, by the time you get to the bottom, you have a baseline of where you are. And it also gives you an idea of, what to pay attention to as you're going through your training. So I always say, create your baseline first before you even start Online Expert or, whatever resources you're using. Find the objectives, print them out, and figure out what you know already and what you don't. And then once you have that figured out, then you start your training. It tells you where to key in, okay? One more thing before I move on. At the bottom, you have this acronym list. Make sure you visit this. There's a ton of acronyms. You don't need to know all of these. Just key in on the ones that are up in the objective somewhere. You see it in the objectives, you don't know what it is, scroll down here, find it, put it on a flashcard or something, and tattoo it to your brain until you know it. Whatever method works for you. I use flashcards, but everyone has their own methods. So just make sure you know the acronyms, because you're going to see a lot of them on the exam. I guarantee it. And then at the very bottom, this is something that a lot of people overlook, but there is a list of hardware and software of stuff that you should spend some time using, experimenting with, playing with, whatever word works for you. But you should spend some time, as much time as you can, using and playing with this stuff, so it gives you that experience that you may be lacking, right? If you don't have that 2 years of experience, which I think most of us don't, you have to try to find a way to give yourself that hands-on, so you feel comfortable when you're taking the exam. So these are the things that they're recommending, CompTIA itself, that you spend some time using. And there are some places where you can get access to these, to virtual versions of a lot of this stuff. Obviously, software, most of this stuff is just downloadable. So anyway, this is a list that you want to take a look at and make sure that you're not just learning this stuff up here, but you're putting it into practice. It's about the application of it as well. So, okay, so those are the objectives. Make sure you find these and make sure that you take advantage of this. This is your list of what's going to be on the exam. So the better you know this, the more comfortable you should feel going into the exam. One quick thing, I did get an email from someone yesterday, and they mentioned that they saw some stuff on the exam that was kind of left field, or they didn't see how it tied into the objectives. That's something that you can expect on every CompTIA exam, at least the A+, Net+, and security. And they mentioned it in the little. There's a bunch of stuff that they give you before the exam starts, right? And they mentioned that there may be some questions in there that don't tie to the objectives. And they also mentioned that it doesn't count towards your final grade. So don't get too thrown off by those. If you come across something that just seems like it doesn't fit, just, put your best guess in and then keep moving. But by all means, do not sit there and stare at it, or don't let it throw you off your game. Just kind of flag it and move on. All right. Okay. So some of the tools or some of the resources that I like to use, obviously you guys are going to get Online Expert, and you're using UCertify, you're using CertMaster, which is drafted by CompTIA, so it's a very good resource to use. But some of the other ones, obviously the course notes, if you can get your hands on Professor Mercer's course notes, a lot of the terminology stuff is all in here, all mapped out. Okay, so this is another thing that I'll probably try to keep with you. All the notes have already been taken. So if you're someone that doesn't like taking notes, then definitely want to get these. They're already here for you. And this is a good place to start when it comes to the information, okay, because it's all here. This is a very big document. You can see it's over 100 pages, so I want to recommend printing this. But what I do is I'll just save it to my in the cloud somewhere where you can access it from multiple devices. I put mine in my G drive, so it's easy to pull up on my phone or tablet or computer, whatever I'm using. So it's a lot easier to do that than it is to print out 100 pages. You probably wear your ink out doing that. But all the information is here, so you want to make sure that you find something that at least that has all the information. Okay. So I definitely recommend getting this as well. Okay. Thirdly, when it comes to hands-on, you have to find some way. I mean, one of the things that you're going to see on this exam, okay, is you're going to see stuff like this where they're going to ask you to interpret what you're seeing, right? So, and tell them what's wrong with it, what's right with it, right? What needs to be changed, things like that. So you have to find a way to practice this stuff, or at least get exposed to it. So when you're seeing it on the exam, it doesn't just look like a bunch of blah, 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 right? So that's where, downloading some of those resources that are at the bottom of the objectives, that's where that's going to come in handy. You're going to want to look at some of this stuff before you just go in and take the exam. Otherwise, it's just going to be brand new to you. You're not going to know what you're looking at. And I've already heard quite a few students mention that. It's something that stands out to them. So definitely something you want to look out for. Another place where you can get exposure to some of this stuff, right? Someone mentioned U-Certify, right? Which is a good resource. I'll show that in just a second. Another one that may surprise you is the hands-on simulator, right? This is also from CompTIA, you can see, right? This is actually, it's a Net Plus hands-on simulator, but a lot of the stuff ties in, and it has a security section here, which is pretty extensive, right? It gives you quite a few labs, and this kind of keys in on some of the concepts and things that you need to know for security. So this one, it has two types of labs. You can see here this little, right, this is just kind of a matching thing. So if I click on this one and I start it, you can see this is terminology, which is very important on this exam, okay? Not just understanding the information, but knowing the difference between, because there's a lot of stuff that that is the same. It's not the same, but it sounds the same, looks the same, but there's little subtle differences, and you have to know them, or you know, you're just going to be guessing. Okay, so this one is just matching up terminology, right? Going through and finding out, you know, what goes to what, which is good for this exam. Okay, it's not necessarily hands-on, but it does test your knowledge of the terminology, which you definitely have to know for this exam. So you get a lot of practice with those. This one is a really good one because it's taking the ports, or, you know, the protocols, and not only do you have to know what they are, right? So you have to put them by what they do, but you also have to know if it's considered secure or not, which is definitely important for Security Plus. Okay, that's what a lot of Security Plus is about, is making, you know, going into situations and determining, okay, what do I do here, right? You come into a scenario and you're trying to find, you know, where are the holes, right? Where are the vulnerabilities? You're going to be asked to do that quite a bit on the exam. So the protocols starting here is a good starting point, because a lot of the times, whatever the vulnerability is, it's going to be subtle. You know, it's not going to be something that just stands out to you unless you already know this stuff real well. You know, it's going to be something that you're going to have to spot. So this is another good one. Type of threats and attacks, right? You got a bunch of different terminologies here. So this is a really good resource to use to test that stuff, right? And then once you get past all the terminology, you actually there is a hands-on portion here where it lets you put that stuff into action. So on this particular lab here, it walks you through how to configure port security on a switch, okay, which is, you know, it's something that you definitely want to know how to do, especially those of you that are going to be going into Cisco. This gives you some practice with basic switch configurations that you're definitely going to have to know moving over into IC&D. So this is a really good resource. It's more of a teaching tool, you know, as opposed to something like Packet Tracer, where you kind of already have to know how to do this stuff. It doesn't really walk you through it. So this is a really good resource for learning the terminology and also getting some hands-on practice, you know, making things a little bit more secure. So you can see there's a few of these where it lets you do some things here. You configure a VPN, right? VPN client. And none of these are really they're not too elaborate. It's just kind of, it's basic stuff. It's not anything that should overwhelm too much, unless you haven't done your homework and you don't know what you're doing. But Anyway, I just wanted to point this out. This is an example of some type of hands-on resource that you want to find. You don't want to rely on just training videos. Okay, that's only going to get you so far. You're only going to pick up so much. So, anyway, like I said, this is mostly a NetPlus resource, but it does have a security component to it that gives you some practice in that area. All right. What else? Obviously, you know, there's a few other resources that you would want to use for this particular exam, but you know, the main thing that you want to make sure that you do is you find the resources that work for you. Make sure you get some hands-on in some way, shape, or fashion. You get some type of hands-on practice via, you know, the resources provided for you through LearnKey, or if you have to go onto the internet and find other ones, right? It's just about finding what works for you and sticking with that. But overall, this exam is pretty, you know, I'm not going to say it's easy, it's not. It's just, there's a ton of information that you need to make sure that you understand. And, you know, I mean, some of it, you'll pick up the basics of it in some of the other exams. Like you get your introduction to security in the second A+ exam. And then, you know, there's some things that tie in between NetPlus and security as well. So, you know, you don't have to kind of learn all this stuff from scratch, but, you know, there's just a ton of information. So just make sure you take your time and you study these objectives as well as you can, and try to cover all this stuff. Try to cover as much of this stuff as you can before you go in and take the exam. Okay, that's my advice. Make sure you get some hands-on. Make sure you know the acronyms, and and, you know, make sure that you take advantage of whatever resources you can get your hands on. That would be my advice. What John is saying, that he heard that you might have to set up a router. Yeah, that's something that could happen in A+. To be honest with you, I remember having to set up an access point on the first A+ exam. It was simple stuff. You know, the difference between what you do in A+ and what you do in security is, in A+ it's going to be simple. You know, you probably just have to make sure that you put the SSID down right, use the right password, right, set the right encryption, but a lot of that stuff is provided to you. So you're just, you know, they're telling you what to put in. You just need to make sure you put it in the right place for A+. For Security Plus, what you can expect there is maybe the router is already set up and you need to look for the weakness. You know, maybe the router is set up in a way, you know, maybe they want you to harden the system. That's the word that you have to get used to, right? How do you harden it? It's basically, it's a fancy way of saying making it more secure, right? So, for example, let me ask you guys, right? What are some of the ways that you can make a router more secure? Someone give me an example. You guys can say it out loud, type it in the chat box, whatever works. Tyler says Web 2. Clinton says disconnect from the internet. Yeah, that'll definitely make it more secure, right? Username and password change, right? Obviously, you should do that from the jump. You should never use anything with factory authentication information, right? Change SSID. Yeah, okay. So both of you said that. WPA2. Yeah, absolutely. Right. So those are some of the things that you want to look for if they're asking you to configure or to change a router in Security Plus. Look for the weaknesses, right? What would be something that you probably want to stay away from? Yeah, there you go. Tyler got it. WPA2, exactly. Yeah, so if you see that, you go in and you look at the router and you see that it's using web, well, that should be a red flag right there, right? That should be something that you should change immediately. Um, if you go in and you notice that the password is password, right? Um, and the SSID is default, right? You definitely want to change those, right? What are some of the more advanced techniques that are also considered, hardening the router or access point? Because you could see some of those simple ones. There you go, MAC filtering, right? MAC filtering, firewall, um, enable encryption. Well, yeah, obviously you want to have encryption enabled, right? You don't want to have a open network. It's not considered secure at all. Here's one for you, okay? Another thing that you can do when it comes to CompTIA, they'll say that disabling the SSID makes your system more secure. And it does to a certain extent. All it does is it just makes sure that that your network's not being broadcasted, right? That the SSID is not being broadcasted. So anyone that's like war driving, right, in the neighborhood looking for access points to jump on or something like that, they won't see it. Doesn't necessarily make it more secure. No, you can still access the network if you have the right information. You know where to find it. You'll still be able to access it, but it'll make it so that it won't show up. So, yeah, disabling the SSID as well, right? Location. Sometimes it's about location. Putting the access point behind a locked door or something like that, right? That's making it more secure, making it so that someone doesn't have physical access to it. What else? There's another one. What about configuring it statically? Does that make it more secure? FBI DEA. Oh, what do you guys say? Does configuring your access point to give out addresses statically, right? Does that make it more secure? Tyler says no. Why not? Anyone else? Before we go into it, anyone else have
All
any
right,
thoughts
instead
on
of
it?
typing, because isn't static, doesn't it just stay the same then and it doesn't change? Wouldn't you want it? I'm still learning a lot of the terminology, so forgive me if I don't get this right, but isn't there a setting to where it doesn't just keep a static address and it changes it, like more dynamic?
Right. So there's static and there's dynamic,
So wouldn't
right?
dynamic be more secure?
Well, it depends. Um, it is secure because it's signed as so static versus dynamic. First of all, let's talk about it. Okay. So basically, what static means is that it doesn't mean that it stays the same, but that's because instead of being dynamic, right? Dynamic it dishes out all the information automatically, right?
Okay.
So if I have a SSID and I have a password, that's all I need to get on the network, right? I just need to know the SSID and I need to know the password. If I know that, then I don't have to configure an IP address. I don't have to configure a subnet mask. I don't have to configure a default gateway. I don't have to configure a what do you call it? Skipping my mind right now. um, a DNS. I'm sorry, right? DNS, DHCP, right? All that gets done automatically. But if I have my router setups to where I have to do everything statically, then that means that if I want to get on the network or if someone else wants to get on my network, not only do they have to know the SSID
Oh,
and
they
they
got
have to know the password,
everything.
but they have to configure everything. as
Okay,
well,
okay.
right?
That makes sense. Yeah.
So if that's the case, which one is more secure?
So it would be that one, the static one.
It would be static, exactly, right? It's also going to be a pain, right?
Yeah.
Um, Especially if you have a large network. But if you have a small network, configuring it statically is actually what's the word? I can't think of it right now. Um, is advised, right? That's what you want to do because it makes it more secure, right?
Yeah.
So if
Okay, that
someone's
makes a lot
wardrobe,
of sense.
it doesn't matter.
Okay.
Someone's wardrobe to find networks to hop on. They need a lot more information than just the SSID and the password. So yeah, that's another way of securing the network, right? Or making it a little bit more secure. It doesn't really secure, but it makes it more secure. It makes it harder to get on. So Clinton says you can give it a static public IP address, can you? You can't give it yourself. No, that's NAT, right? When you're going outside your network, which is your public IP, you need NAT for that. Right? There's a translation that goes on, and that's what NAT is, anyways. Network address translation. So you can set up a pool. You can set up a static public IP pool, but that's something that you would do. You're not going to be doing on Sec Plus. It's more of a Cisco thing where you're going to be actually doing that. But you can set up a pool for yourself. All right. Any other questions? That was a good example right there. Okay. Yeah, good job, guys. All good information. Clinton says if you want to secure your network, change your SSID to FBI or DEA. People will leave you alone. I agree with that. Let's see, John, did you send me some questions, John? When? I don't see any. Not recently. I remember you sent me some network questions. Oh, actually, yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, I didn't. It was a couple weeks ago. Let me see here. Bear with me just a second, because I'm not okay. I'm gonna see the practice question. Okay, is it these? Okay. Okay. Yeah, this. I don't know. This is too many. Did you have a question about all of these, or what was your main question? I'm sorry. It was a couple weeks ago, so. It's only 2 questions you asked. This is 1 and 2. Okay. You know what? Give me a second to go over these, and then I'll get with you independently and go over these. I don't want to use up too much time trying to go through this right now. So what I'll do is I'll get with you a little bit later after I've had some time to take a look at these a little bit, okay? No worries. It's my fault. I totally forgot that you sent these to me, so I didn't get a chance to look at them yet. Okay. I do want to give some time to, I forgot who it was, but they said they were taking a 901 tomorrow. So I do want to give some time to that as well. Clinton, right? Okay. No worries. So, Clinton, while we're on the topic, is there anything in particular about A+ that you want to address, or that you would like us to address, or just kind of general? Are you just looking for like general advice? Taking the course, test repeatedly, start master use for YouTube videos. Okay. So real quick, I just want to bring this up. This is something that we've been talking about for the last couple of weeks. So I want to make sure everyone understands this. So he's going in to take the 901. Okay, this exam right now, it is in transition. Okay, this exam or this series is only available for about another month and a half, till the end of July. Okay, so here's my advice. Okay, if you go and take this exam, okay, if you pass, then fine and dandy. Just make sure that you put a lot of time and energy into knocking out this 902, so you do not have to start over. Okay, for those of you that already have the 901 cert, you are locked into that series. You are locked into that series now, which means that you need to get the 902 if you want to be A+ certified. If you do not get the 902 before it expires, then you have to start over. Your 901 means nothing. It goes away with the exam, okay? If you're able to get the 901 and the 902 before it expires, you're A+ certified, all right? You don't have to worry about it for another 3 years, okay? So with that said, if you haven't taken the 901 yet, if you haven't passed it yet, I'm sorry. I wouldn't be taking the 900 series anymore. I would be taking the 1000 series, because I don't want to be racing against the clock to get my cert, right? It's easy to have hiccups taking these exams. It's easy to fail an exam and then have to wait a couple weeks before you take the next one. And if that happens, then you end up having to start over, okay? So just make sure you all understand that, all right? If you don't, get with me afterwards, or just look it up. Go to Google and, look up the A+ exams, and they'll let you know what you need to be able to do, okay? You're saying you're scheduled to take your 902. No, so you're not going to. All right, so if you pass the 901, you're taking it tomorrow. So if you pass it, go straight into the 902, and you have time to get it. Okay, if you pass your exam tomorrow, you have time. A month and a half is plenty of time. All right. When I took my second A+ exam, I took it probably 2 or 3 weeks after passing the first one. Okay, so it's doable. But what I'm saying is, if you can avoid it, then avoid it. The way to avoid it is by, not taking the 901. If you have it scheduled to take it like tomorrow, like you do, then go take it. Just take it. If you have it scheduled tomorrow, then take it. If you have it scheduled for like next, like next week or the week after that, I would take the 1,000 series. There's not much difference between the objectives. The only difference is they added virtualization, right? All these knowledge domains are still available on the 1,000 series. Okay, I can just show you that real quick. Doesn't take long to find it, right? Show you how to find the objectives. So you just go to Google, type in A+, right? Objectives, and it pops up. So where's the PDF? Oh, it's the 1002. It's the 1001 right here. I'm sorry, that's the wrong one. It would be this right here, right? So you have these over here. When I scroll down to these objectives, there's not much difference at all. So you could literally, look, so what they did was they swapped out hardware and mobile devices. So hardware is 3.0 now, and mobile devices is 1.0 now, right? Networking is still there, right? Hardware network troubleshooting is still there. The only difference is this right here. This is what they've thrown in, and it's only 12% of the exam. So you can literally go take this, you can study for this exam, and you can literally pass it without even putting any, I mean, I'm not saying do that, but, you know, obviously, you know, find some way to get this information that's out there, right? So just make sure that you cover these areas in virtualization, but it's not, you know, there's not a lot. And since these objectives they're so similar, if I had a choice between the 901 or the 1000s, you know, the 1001, I'm taking the 1001 because I don't have to worry about the clock, right? If I take the 901, now I'm on the clock. I have until the end of July, and if I don't, if something happens and I'm not able to get it, well, I'm going to have to come and take the 1001 anyway. I have to start over anyway. So what I'm saying is, you know, why not just take this out of the equation if you can? Okay. Dan says you feel okay about the test by the end of June. About the test to take by the end of June. Are you talking about taking the 902? Are you already on the 902? Okay. Yeah, if you're already on the 902, yeah. Here's the thing, okay? And you have to know this. You have to understand this, all right? If you're taking it for the first time and you fail, you can go in the next day and take it again if you want, all right? Where it gets difficult is after you fail the second time, because now they make you wait 14 days, all right? And that's when things start to get difficult, because even if you're ready to go in and you feel like you can pass it, they're not going to let you, right? So that's where things get kind of tricky. Right now we're right here, and you have plenty of time, right? He's going to be taking it tomorrow, so if he takes it tomorrow, he can literally start, and he passes, he can literally start training for the 902 right here, right? And in a few weeks, you could be ready to take it if you go hard, right? But let's say that he takes it on the 28th and he fails. Well, you can go in and you can take it again on the 1st of July, right? But if you take it on the 1st of July after you failed it on the 28th, well, now you have to wait till down here to take it again. And if you fail it again, well, you pretty much have to start over, right? Once you get here, once you get around here, you know, if this is your second time taking it, if you fail, you have to start over. So that's what I'm saying. If you have a choice, right, if you haven't already passed the 901, then, you know, what I would do is I would take the 1001. It's not much difference between the objectives. If you already have the 901, use the time that you have now. I mean, double up if you have to, but just make sure that you don't have to start over. Okay? Because that's what's going to be the case. Once the exam is expired, your 901 cert expires with it if you don't have the 902. which means you're gonna have to start over. So just keep that in mind. If you had a choice, I would take the 901. Okay, I'm sorry, not the 1001. All right. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about it. I just wanted to make sure that I made that clear. And we got about 10 minutes left, so let's go into it a little bit. You said that you feel pretty comfortable. Online expert, okay. Okay. Just need to get 902 done on first try, which would be, yeah. What I would do is I would take it sooner. I wouldn't want my first try to be my only attempt. And you have plenty of time to get ready for the 902. You do. You can, like I said, it was only 2 or 3 weeks between my my first and my second cert. Now that's me, obviously, right? Everyone's not me. Everyone didn't come into this program with the knowledge base that I had. And I mean, I didn't pass it by much, right? So, but this is what I would do if I were you. If you pass tomorrow, right? And I would take it anywhere past give yourself time for a retake. That's what I'm saying. Obviously, your first try will be on the 25th. So if you do happen to fail, obviously you can go in for the 26th if you want to, but you don't give yourself much time. You give yourself about a week to have to go back in. And you know what I would do is I wouldn't go anywhere past like probably, I don't know, take it like here or something. You only need like a few weeks really to get ready for this stuff, and you know, don't wait until your timeline tells you to take it. Take it when you're ready. If you're ready to take it a few weeks earlier, then take it. But you know, you're kind of putting yourself at a disadvantage if you take it so late. So I would take it by the 3rd week of July. Right, which is about a week earlier than you're scheduled to take it, but yeah, I wouldn't take it that late. Personally, I wouldn't. Okay. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about A+. This is pretty much it for Security Plus. Unless you guys have any other questions, well, we'll go into that again. This is more of a Sec Plus session.